You are now tuned in to the Storm Tracker podcast.
Welcome back, family, to the Storm Tracker podcast. I'm Marcus Benjamin, representing for CanesCounty.com, part of the Rivals.com network. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on all platforms and also subscribe to this YouTube channel live from Canes County. Joining me today is Rob Cassidy, basketball recruiting director for Rivals.com, to talk a little Canes hoops with me. Big game this week against Kentucky. Thanks for joining me today, Rob.
Marcus, anytime, man. That little intro you played gave me like nostalgia for tones of home, man. I lived in South Miami, right next to the Coral Gables campus there for 8 years. I just moved, so it's nice kind of seeing some shots from the old city.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you missed the weather right now. I'm sure, right?
Yeah, it's freezing out there. It's my first year in Pittsburgh, so I'm still like trying to remember what it's like to be cold. But yeah, right now this is the sweet spot for Miami weather.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the sweet spot for Miami basketball as far as their era is concerned. I mean, Jim Larranaga has done a great job building this program. Elite Eight 2 years ago, Final Four last year, and even bigger expectations this season. Of course, I've been covering the team for the first couple of games, and I'll tell you, Rob, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with this team. I make it back to Final Four.
They say that guards win in March, guards and experience win in March, and Miami's got plenty of that, and they had plenty of that last year when they were back there. I only really got to watch them for an entire game I watched the Kansas State game, and they were dominant. They did everything very well in that game. I love Nigel Pack. I understand that he can be a frustrating player sometimes, but he can also be a very exciting player, and that's my kind of guy. Kind of a high risk, high reward guard. That can make plays for you and go out and get a bucket.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he seemed to has taken his game to the next level. Norchad Omier has seemed to kind of develop an overall offensive game. He's shooting threes out there pretty consistently every game. Very impressive around the rim. You can tell he's kind of worked on that and improved there. What impresses you about just Miami right now, and how far do you think they could go this season?
It's the depth, I think, with Miami and just how many guards they can run at you that are all capable of doing a number of things, and not just scoring the basketball. They've got guards that rebound pretty well, and they've got the experience. They look a lot like the team 2 years ago to me, just as far as a depth of guard standpoint and an experience standpoint. And there are a lot of teams that I think we're going to find out real quick that, in the kind of this transfer portal era, that experience matters more than anything. You don't see, at least in the small sample size that we've had for the last few years, it hasn't been as much of a freshman dominated sport as it was pre-transfer portal era, because you can get some veterans into some high profile spots and high profile programs like Miami, and they can really shine. And I think we've seen, kind of the landscape of college basketball shift that way. And Miami's done a good job acclimating to it, I think. And it would be pretty easy for a guy of Jim Larranaga's age to just kind of get set in his ways, fold in this new name, image, and likeness transfer portal era, and kind of let the game pass him by. And it is not, obviously. I think that's kind of the most impressive thing about the Miami program right now is, coaches at that age sometimes, especially, and you've seen it happen, Roy Williams folded his cards. When this whole thing took hold, I think a lot of guys, they kind of checked out. And Larranaga has adapted and has done the opposite and is thriving in this new era.
Yeah, and with that, Miami has a top 10 team and about to embark on a top 10 matchup against Kentucky. Biggest game of the year thus far for the Hurricanes. Kentucky has looked impressive themselves. They took Kansas, who's number one team, pretty close to the end in that game. What impresses you, I guess, the most about Kentucky and this upcoming matchup?
Well, John Calipari has kind of started to run a more modern offense now. He's got his bigs kind of stretching the floor a little bit instead of kind of playing a traditional role, which has kind of been the knock on him the last few years, is that he refused to adapt to a modern offense. It's interesting because the two teams are constructed similarly, sort of, in the way that they're both guard-heavy teams with depth. The difference is Miami's got some veteran guards guards, and the guards in Kentucky are all freshmen for the most part. They've got a couple transfers, but they rely heavily on Reed Sheppard and Robert Dillingham and DJ Wagner, who are all talented players, but are still, if you watch them game by game, still trying to find their footing, with the exception of Sheppard, who might be their best guard. You'll see him maybe coming off the bench in that game, but he plays big minutes, and he's probably the most college ready of the bunch. So it really is. It's a bunch of guards. It's experience versus youth and NBA potential. And then it might come down to whose big men play the best, because that's kind of the X factor there.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a very intriguing matchup. Just to really see where Miami is with their team and with their program. I think that they actually have a better team than last year, which is maybe
scary to say.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I'm intrigued to see the matchups in this game, and which matchup are you most intrigued to kind of see Tuesday night?
It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Justin Edwards and Matthew Cleveland if those two end up on each other. I think Matthew Cleveland is becoming what I always thought he would become at Florida State. There were NBA scouts when he was a senior in high school that were really high on him. And similarly with Justin Edwards this year, they're not identical players, but I think Cleveland's got the length to match up on him and frustrate him a little bit. And if that's the way that Larranaga chooses to go, guarding Justin Edwards, I think that it'll be successful, and that's the matchup that I'm watching anyway.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to kind of see the big men, Norchet Omier, and see if he can continue his offensive game that he has started this season with. And Bensley Joseph is another player that I think can be a difference maker in this game. And Wooga Poplar has been pretty outstanding as well. Larranaga has said that he is the NBA player on the team, and that he's the best pull-up jump shooter that he's seen. What are your thoughts on Wooga Poplar?
He's scoring in bunches right now. He's leading them in scoring, right? I don't have the stats in front of me, but he can score from all over the floor. He's been kind of a revelation for me, I think. I don't think that coming into the season, I was really expecting him to have taken this, to become this exactly what he's become, this leading scorer on the team. Like you said, the pull-up jumper jumps off the page. Like Larranaga said, he can shoot it from deep. He can get to the basket. They're going to struggle guarding him there, Kentucky, because I don't know who you put on him. If you do, maybe you put DJ Wagner on him, who isn't exactly the most, that's not the headline on DJ Wagner's game isn't defending a guy that can score off the bounce. So I think that he has potential to frustrate them. It's going to be interesting. I think Reed Sheppard's got potential to frustrate Miami. So, I see this one as, if I was a betting man here, I would probably take the over, because I just see points on points on points in this one. I don't really know who I'd like to win. I'll usually bet on experience over youth, especially in college basketball, especially in big games. I think that's probably where the edge lied in the Kansas-Kentucky matchup, and I think Miami might have the edge there too. I expect a close game, though.
Yeah, I do expect a close game. I'm interested to see how they handle the environment, because of course Rupp Arena is one of the best in the nation. So I'm interested to see how they kind of bond together, because this team has been battle tested already. I think just with the experience that you have from these past couple of years, but of course, Lexington's a different animal,
so sure is.
See how they'll handle, that environment. They've been in tough environments before against Duke and Carolina, but this one's going to be a different beast, and I'm interested to see who kind of steps up and makes plays for the Hurricanes on Tuesday night.
It's interesting in the way.
Go ahead.
I said it's interesting in the way too that it is kind of like, it seems to be a little bit in my mind, a little bit of a potential versus production matchup, in the way that Kentucky's guys are all seen as future NBA, not all, but they've got 5 guys in that roster that are seen as potential NBA pros, and they're not there yet. You don't expect them to step on campus to look like that right away, but if it starts clicking for them, and it hasn't yet, then I think Miami can be in trouble. And if it doesn't get there, then I think Miami has a chance to really blow this game open. It's going to be about composure, I think, in this big game atmosphere, and we'll see which team has the most of it.
Yeah, definitely should be interesting. But I did want to ask your prediction on this one. I'm not aware of what the line is. I'm looking online. I haven't seen it yet. But how do you think this all plays out?
I'm gonna, if I was setting a line in Rupp, Miami -1, -1.5. I don't know. I'm not an odds maker. Like I said, I will bet. I think they're both very talented teams, and I will bet on experience against potential and depth of guards. In the day of the week. That's why they say it wins in March, and I think this is going to have a March-like atmosphere. I think Miami has got players that have been more battle tested in the spotlight than Kentucky. They've seen it all before, especially the guys on the roster that were on this roster last year. So I don't think that they'll be particularly rattled by Rupp. I think Miami will pull this out, but I will not be surprised either way. Like I said, the line's got to be 1-3, right? Did you find it?
Yeah, I'm trying to look for it. I don't.
It might not be out yet.
See it.
They might not release until the day of, morning of.
Yeah, I don't see it as of yet, but yeah, I'm assuming it's going to be okay. So I have a computer predicted spread here, and it says -6 to Kentucky.
Kentucky, yeah, at Rupp. Yeah, I'm betting Miami there. I think. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what the odds makers think. Those computer projected spreads sometimes are a little bit wrong when they come out because Caesar's got their own formula or whatever. But we'll see. If it's 6, I think Miami covers 6 pretty easy in this.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely taking the points on that. So should be an interesting one on Tuesday night. But the future of the program just looks bright, Rob, especially when it comes to recruiting. Of course, you're the expert, and you provide your analysis for my website at canescounty.com. Miami has the 6th ranked class in the nation. Tell me a little bit about the players that Miami has in their 2024 class that Hurricanes fans should look forward to.
Yeah, obviously the top name there is Jalil Bethea, who really, a Philly guy who really, everybody knew who he was before this summer, but really had a breakout summer this year. He grew a couple inches. He became one of the top scorers in the EYBL, playing for Team Final, who assistant coach DJ Irving used to coach for, so there's a pipeline there. He is going to be, I think he's, as far as when you talk about NBA pros, he's the guy that you look at as, okay, this guy has the potential to be a 1 or 2 and done type kid. He's got the length, he can shoot it. But, the thing about him is that the defensive versatility for him, that'll allow him to get on the floor early, I think, is because he plays defense and he can defend 1 through 4 pretty much. And, maybe 1 through 3, depending on who that 4 is. He stretches the floor, can score at all 3 levels. And, Austin Schwartz does, the other commit, Austin Schwartz does a little bit of the same things as Bethea without the length. He's really a kind of a volume scorer, which, I kind of see him as a guy that's going to have to do some work with shot selection to really, reach his college potential. I think he's a guy that's going to be a star in college. I don't know if he's the kind of guy that comes in right away and is a star. I think that Bethea's got that kind of build. I'm not sure that Schwartz has it. But as soon as he kind of, makes better decisions with the basketball, stops taking contested shots, he can really impact the game. And I saw him taking over a ton of games this year in the UIBL. Finishes through contact. Is a little bit beefy. I kind of like a beefy guard. I don't want to say a Khalid El-Amin type, but kind of a Khalid El-Amin type. Can absorb contact at the rim, and it is kind of a fun player to watch.
Khalid El-Amin, that's a throwback name right there.
Listen, Marcus, I've always been a sucker for guys like that, like Vance Fields. Like if you're like 6'4", and it looks like you work out maybe twice a week and also enjoy cheeseburgers, I am a fan. I am a fan.
Absolutely, me too. I'm sure Norchad or Mir has a bunch of cheeseburgers that he eats.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing about Miami recruiting, I used to talk about this with Chris Caputo when he was there, and he's left since, and now he's at George Washington, is they consider themselves, I think rightly, culturally a northern program. So you don't really see them recruiting in the South or really in Florida for that much. They will go up north because culturally they consider their school culturally northern and they consider the program northern. So they they dabble in Philadelphia, and they'll dabble in New York, and in North Carolina, and up there, and you'll see them recruiting that area more. And that is targeted. Caputo would let me in on that. They think that it's easier to sell a kid from up there on Miami University because once they get to school, they kind of jibe with the culture a little bit more than, say, a kid from Northern Florida or even Georgia, because Miami isn't a southern city and the campus isn't really a southern campus. That's hard to explain. People listening to this, probably it's obvious to them, but trying to explain that to people elsewhere, it's hard. It's that it's its own thing culturally. It's not the South. It just happens to be South.
Yeah, definitely. I've lived down in Florida pretty much all my life, and I actually went to school in Tallahassee as well. So I always thought that Northern Florida is a different state.
Should be. They should cut it in half.
Yeah. Northern Florida is actually more southern than South Florida. You
draw the line at Palm Beach County, and then you just split it. Then you've got South Florida and North Florida, just like the Carolinas. That's my opinion.
Right, exactly. Larranaga, his stomping grounds is the Northeast. Ever since he was at George Mason, he's been recruiting that area, and that hasn't really stopped. He hasn't really recruited South Florida, but now that you mentioned that, he was at the game for Columbus, the nationally televised game down here in Columbus, looking at the Boozer twins. So he is trying to recruit down here in South Florida, even though, those guys are, transplants, I guess you could say, so to speak.
Yeah.
But what are the chances you think that Miami can land one or both of the Boozer twins?
They're going to school together. I've asked them that. I don't think they're not going to split up. If Coach K was still at Duke, I would tell you 100% this is a Duke thing. It's over. Don't waste your time. But he's not. And say what you want about Duke. In my opinion, John Shire's doing a tremendous job recruiting, but until he wins at a high level, the jury's still out there on the court. I think that, people got swept up in the Jace Richardson recruitment too, where they thought he might go elsewhere. He ended up at Michigan State, but Tom Izzo's still there. I think that there's a chance they'll go elsewhere. I don't think these other schools are wasting their time totally. I think Duke still has to be looked at as the leader here, but it's not as though the guy that coached Dad is still there. You're still banking on an unknown if you're them. And going to Duke now isn't like going to Duke under Coach K. And until he wins at a high level, I don't think that it's comparable. So they've still got work to do. I think Duke has work to do to land these kids. It's not just going to happen for them. So if they mess up, I really do think if there's a misstep or they have a bad year or something goes wrong up there, or even something small goes wrong on a visit, and they decide they're not comfortable there, I think Miami can get into it. Like I said, I think it would be much, much different if Coach K was still running the show over there. But now the margin for error is much smaller in this recruitment. So it'll be interesting to watch.
So you're thinking that maybe the way that the season goes will have an impact?
I think it'll be, it's not one factor, obviously, but I think that definitely impacts. You have to be able to see the vision of a new coach. And it's not like you can ask Dad can tell you, hey, this is how things are in that program because I played in it. Dad played for that program, but he didn't play in this program. So they are, in essence, selling a dream. And it's one that's going to take some work, I think. I think Duke fans figure this is going to fall in their lap, and I still think they're the leader, don't get me wrong. But this isn't a done deal. Things can go wrong in recruiting all the time. Yeah,
absolutely. Of course, we know about that.
And he's right down there in Pinecrest, right? Like they're right down there in Columbus, and it's easy access, so you never know.
Right, exactly. I think it's maybe 8 miles away from campus. So so should be fun. Should be fun to kind of watch that recruitment and see how it all plays out. Rob Cassidy joining me from Rivals.com, basketball recruiting director. Thank you for joining me today, and hopefully we'll see each other again in the future.
Hey, anytime you need me, I'm here, Marcus. I appreciate you, my guy.
All right, appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, of course, the Storm Tracker podcast on all platforms, and make sure you subscribe to the website, cadecounty.com. We are still running a Black Friday special all day today on Monday to take advantage of 75% off the first year. Until the next episode.